Welcome to the Mankind Cave. Welcome to Kayfabe Connection, your home for facts, rumors, knowledge, trivia, and everything you know and hope to know about pro wrestling. Hit the subscribe button. It is right down here. If you want to listen to something different other than generic metal music, welcome to Q1 to 4 dudes talking about wrestling, the same topics, the same companies over and over. If you want to listen to something different, hit the subscribe button.
Hey, this is Adam, a.k.a. Edge, a.k.a. the Rated R Superstar, a.k.a. Dwight from Haven, a.k.a. What was my name in Bending the Rules? I can't remember, but you're listening to the Kayfabe Connection.
This is Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks, and you're listening to the Kayfabe Connection, your home for facts, rumors, knowledge, trivia, and everything you know or hope to know about pro wrestling. It's just too sweet.
Welcome to the Mankind Cave. Welcome to another episode of Kayfabe Connection, your home for facts, rumors, knowledge, trivia, and everything you know and hope to know about pro wrestling. Oh, man. So we took a break. We took a break to just basically digest everything that's happened in the wrestling world. This has been a long time coming for this stuff to come out. And we might as well get it out of the way first. It's a big black eye on the wrestling business. And this is something, again, as I said, it's a long time coming. This is something where it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. And I've made this point a couple of times, just in group chats and, fellow wrestling fans. Wrestling is a very ego-driven field where males are judged on their looks. Yeah, true. But when it comes to women, the treatment of women differs a little bit from men. And it's in all facets of wrestling. It's even down to the fans. I've been at shows where there's been fans who've said some pretty disgusting things, vulgar things out loud, and they wait till it gets quiet, and then they throw out this, sexist chant or just something gross. And if I'm anywhere in the vicinity, I'll always check that person. There's creepy fans who, there's that famous Becky Lynch picture at WrestleMania where the dude is like hugged up on her like this and she's just sitting there like, ugh, so it's with fans. We've seen that because I'm a fan. I'm not a wrestler, and much to my detriment, I know that comes out at times where this is one of those fields where if you haven't taken a bump, I can't have a podcast. I can't critique it, which is always fascinating to me because I'm not a cook. My wife is a culinary master. I am not, but I know food that tastes good. I know food that tastes bad. I'm not a chef. I don't need to be to critique it. So that's pretty laughable. But that's just the fan side. Then you have the professional side. And it's just a few quick things to address, and we'll move on to different topics on this episode. But I don't want to be tone deaf and pontificate and virtue signal about this topic. And I hate to even say topic. This is people's real lives. This is for people who have come out in the open. This is traumatic stuff that has been in the corner of their mind and has ate at them and has reminded them and has bugged them and annoyed them especially if these alleged incidents involve people who we as fans put on a pedestal. You know, how, like, imagine that. Imagine being a woman who's been harmed by one of these wrestlers, and you're at a meet and greet, and you got to see all these people. Oh, you're the greatest. You're my son's hero. And you're sitting there like, oh, if you only knew, like, you know, that constant reminder. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to dominate a whole show from a male perspective. That is super tone deaf. And I think to really explore this topic, it would be in the best interest to include a woman's perspective, because contrary to popular belief, I know we like, you know, we like telling women what they can and can't do with their bodies, and oh, you should have, why did you wait this long, and you should have, well, you should have. Everybody's the expert when you've never been in the situation. So I think that's pretty tone deaf to sit here and dedicate a whole podcast on the subject when it's a male perspective offering it. But I mean, this is a wrestling podcast. It would behoove me not to mention just the issues. And I think beyond just, here's a list, Joey Ryan, you know, David Starr, Travis Banks, here's all these infamous, the list of the people, and this is what he was accused of. You have a Google, there's Twitter, there's all kinds of avenues where you could explore that and peruse through and read at your own leisure. So I'm not going to give this whole list. What do I think about it? I wasn't there. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a wrestling fan. What I think is important, though, is that beyond doing that paint by numbers approach that I feel like a lot of wrestling podcasts take, I just want to look at the core center of the issue. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, wrestling at its core is a very ego-driven field. Ego-driven field. On the men's side of things, you have men who are in great shape. They have to be, presumably, most wrestlers. There are wrestlers that we've seen that aren't body guys, as we say, that get over and get popular. But I think when you look at the archaic sort of perspective of how should a wrestler present themselves, a lot of times we think they got to be this big jack guy, they got to look good for TV, they got to be tan, so on and so forth. There's a certain look that's always been deemed as important and necessary. And if people don't meet that look, meet that criterion, someone like a Kevin Steen, you know, Kevin Owens. There's people who, I remember when he was in Ring of Honor and people were pissed, he wore a t-shirt to wrestle. And people were pissed off about that. And it's like, what does it matter if he's killing it in the ring? Like, and so that precedent has been set. You got to look a certain way. And so with that, there comes ego. You know, you have, from that perspective, let's throw it out there. What are women referred to that are fans of wrestlers? Not women wrestlers, and sometimes they get lumped into this terminology, but what are women who are fans? I know with rock stars, we call them groupies, right? What is the term that we use to describe women who are just fans of wrestlers? Rats, right? Rats. So people will often think, oh, language isn't a big deal. I was an English professor for 7 years, and I can attest to the fact that English is a weapon. It's powerful, and words have meaning, and words can hurt. And too often, if we use these terms over and over and over and over again, it's that 2 + 2 = 5 Orwell mentality. We see it in real life right now. We're in that kind of society right now. Facts are facts, but if the facts hurt my feelings or don't align with my ideology, well, it's probably from a fake website, or it's fabricated, or we didn't see the full video, or right. but words mount up, and when enough people use them, it then goes along and it builds this sort of culture, right? In wrestling, women are rats. Do you know of a term of a dude? Like, we call them creeps, I guess, because there are creepy, trust me, I've seen it in action on Twitter, creepy men interactions with women wrestlers that have to deal. Jordan Grace, Impact champion right now, she has 2 books about dudes that just go into her DM. She screenshot it and then put it in a book. She has 2 volumes of this book, all the creepy shit and so that in and of itself is an issue. Fan interaction with women talent, and the idea that they can just be disrespectful or just take it there, and it's just boys being boys, right? That term itself is used in wrestling. What do we call the dudes backstage? The men. Do you ever hear, it's me and the men backstage, or me and the guy? What is the term they always use? Oh, me and the boys. You know how the boys are. Boys. Again, language. Boys. Boys don't get to be held accountable, right? Men do. But if you're a boy, it's just boys being boys. We rib each other, right? We rib. We play pranks. The boys, like they pooped in the woman's bag and thought it was funny. You know, oh, the boys, they were, trading wives and doing all this stuff, and just boys being boys, right? See where I'm getting at with this stuff? This culture, this wrestling culture, it breeds the worst scenarios that have come to light recently. And it's not surprising. Is it upsetting? Is it dark? Is it horrible? Do you feel for people? Do you hope that they can find some kind of peace and justice through this matter? Absolutely. But again, this is exploring the center, the core, the nucleus of this stuff, not just doing what every other podcast is going to do and go, oh, well, Matt Riddle got accused by this, and then he said she was a stalker, and we're just going down this list and we're just throwing out the accusations, and, if we believe it, or like, no, nope. The core of the problem, it's the business. The business breeds stuff like this to happen. And worst of all, were the stories that came out about trainers coercing trainees into sexual acts. That, in the nature of it, is predatory. And you hope for change, like a lot of things. But just being hopeful, there's no action in that. So how can we take action to prevent these things from happening? Brandon and Birdsong, they do this this great show, Crossroad Sports, and it's based in Indianapolis here. Check them out anywhere you get your podcasts, and in Facebook and other social networks they post on as well. They have me on from time to time, and we talked about a little bit of this subject matter. And I had brought up the notion, the question was posed to me, what do I think the difference is between the AEW women's division and the NXT women's division, or WWE, whatever, the umbrella? And for me, it was Sarah Del Rey. That was the answer I gave. And Kenny Omega, no disrespect to him in AEW, but in NXT and WWE, you have a woman steering the ship and overseeing a lot of what happens. So, and I quoted on the show, some of your favorite matches in NXT, and were some of the best matches in some people's minds ever, Sasha Banks and Bailey at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, I believe. Sarah Del Rey had a hand in that. A woman's perspective. Too often you see in the wrestling business, it's all dictated in much like life, you know, any major companies and whatnot, look at what the CEOs look like. Not much diversity, right? Until you have more women in a more executive role, the culture, not who's booking the matches or just, but someone who can oversee these issues, a woman's perspective, until we have that, it's the same broken record. Because again, it's the good old boys, the boys, right? But that's a distinguishable difference. People asked about after that show. Man, really, I never looked at it that way. But yeah, Kenny Omega plays a heavy hand in the women's division in AEW. Sarah Del Rey does in NXT. Look at the quality of matches. And you're talking to someone who's a big time AEW fan. You know, so that is a difference maker alone. Just having a woman's voice and say so dictate the culture, you know. So that's a big difference maker. But again, as I mentioned, this culture does not change until we have a shift in power, a shift in people who make decisions or also take action when these things are brought to the table. Because you hear that all the time, right? Oh, why did they take so long to say it? Why did I don't know. Why are there like thousands of rape kits in my hometown of Detroit that have been untested? And then you wonder why. Well, why didn't anybody say anything? As I mentioned, the root of the issue, the center of the issue, it's deeper, it's darker than just, you know, a woman wrestler called out a male wrestler. It's the societal core issue of everything. It's the cultural issue within wrestling that is permeated through real life, you know? But look at the way that the Ashley Mazzaro thing was handled with WWE. And again, you asked me, why did someone wait so long? Why didn't anybody say anything? I read the affidavit for Ashley Mazzaro versus the WWE and what she described, what happened. And to me, it seems extremely plausible. And I'm not going to get into that here. You have a Google machine. Google affidavit, Ashley Mazzaro, WWE. Tribute for the troops. That's where the alleged incident took place. And we can't hear anything from her because she's no longer with us. And the damage was done to her. And as a result, she's no longer with us. This stuff is important, man. If you're annoyed that you keep hearing about it, or your other favorite wrestler got called out, if that's annoying to you, shame, man. Selfish. People's voices need to be heard. And across the board, from people who have never had a say in the matter. Now's the time, and now we're seeing it. We've seen other movements that have been sparked up, different uprisings that have occurred here in the course of this last month, 6 weeks. Now is a significant time for change. And it's no longer this thing of like, well, keep it secular, you know, church and state, like keep politics out of wrestling, bruh. This stuff is all bleeding together. Because look at how different companies are handling this whole situation that we've gotten ourselves into since March. Before we touch base on that, might as well get some quick plugs out of the way. Kayfabe Connection on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Come on. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And I say this, and I mean this. We are not like every other podcast. We are not like every other wrestling podcast where welcome to Kevin's wrestling podcast. Well, we're going to predict Extreme Rules, and we call ourselves a wrestling podcast, but we only cover one company. No. And this isn't some dude locker room podcast where it's just rhetoric and garbage that's thrown through the episode and having some sort of unnuanced take on things. I would liken Kayfabe Connection to a podcast that is unlike your other wrestling podcasts, your run-of-the-mill podcast. And don't get me wrong, there's some great wrestling podcasts out there. I'm not vilifying the genre. It's just, this is my elevator pitch to you, right? You want to hear something different. You want to hear fresh takes and fresh perspectives. You're tired of hearing the same humdrum opinions on everything. You're tired of seeing the same format. Again, cue the metal music. Again, cue the 1, 2, 3, 4 male hosts that don't have any different perspective than any other show out there. Cue the reaction shows, the prediction shows. The same garbage over and over again. Right? Not here. Kayfabe Connection on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications so you can get notified when new episodes drop. What I would really love to do is just produce more content here. And the longer we go along, the better the quality gets, the better. I got a Canon that I'm working all the features out right now to get that fired up, so the quality of the videos will definitely go up. But it's important to me as far as how you guys receive this and the reputation of wrestling, which kind of harkens back to the opening topic of this show of wrestling, that it's more than just the proverbial dude in his mom's basement fan, that you can have an intelligent take on things and a nuanced take on things and it not just be this toxic sort of environment. So Kayfabe Connection, subscribe, like the video, comments, all that good stuff. Kayfabe Connection on Instagram, follow us there. And when you follow Kayfabe, it's basically to open up chatter for one. I like to post pictures of past shows that I've attended, and people go, "Oh, I never met Tanahashi, but yo, I met Okada, blah blah blah, and at the New York show." And I have friends. I have actual friends, people that I call a friend of mine, literally from someone who commented on a picture from a Kayfabe post from several years ago. Shout out to my boy Andy Nowicki in Minnesota. One of whom was one of the people who I was talking about, commented, "Oh, you saw Steen?" Well, I saw it was when Steen was doing his last ROH matches. So yeah, you could be my friend if you follow us. But yeah, in all seriousness, Kayfabe Connection on Twitter, at the letter K, FABE Connection on Twitter. Here's another example of we're not the same run-of-the-mill podcast. I don't live tweet. Live tweeting, to me, being a recipient of live tweets, to me is exhausting, let alone being a sender, let alone someone who's watching a wrestling match. Because, see, that's the thing. If I watch a wrestling match, the last thing I want to do is this. That's the last thing I want to do watching a wrestling match. So we don't have live tweeting, but what we do have are different conversational points, debunking rhetoric, which is I think that's the number one use of Twitter, as far as from the Kayfabe handle, is to debunk certain rhetoric that constantly gets thrown around on social media. Like, oh, and this was another topic brought up on the Crossroads Sports Show. Man, what's up with AEW with all the WWE guys? To which I would say, man, what's up with all the golden era WWF guys coming from Memphis and AWA? Right? What's up with all the main eventers in WWE currently who are from ROH or Impact Wrestling? Right? Like, you see where I'm getting at. So Twitter is another fun place where, if you want to see people that don't use rhetoric and will debunk rhetoric, at the letter K, FABE Connection on Twitter. that's pretty much it as far as the plugs go. So getting back to this next topic, good segue is to discuss how, WWE has poorly handled this situation. I'm not going to use the C word on YouTube. As we all know, shame for shame, don't use the C word, but we've been dealing with this since March, and y'all know what we're talking about, right? It's pretty gross on their end to see just how poorly handled this situation has been. I bring this up because it was reported that quite a few employees were testing positive for the C word. And Kayla Braxton is one of them, backstage announcer, interviewer. Renee Paquette, as her shoot name goes. I hope and pray that when your contract is up, whenever it is up with WWE, that you take all the great potential that you have beyond just an interviewer as a host. I mean, she's been a host on 2 great shows that have been canceled. Her kind of reality type show on the network where just the Renee Young show or whatever it was called, that was something where I'm not watching WWE product, but I'm actually tuning into her show. In Talking Smack, she did such an incredible job on Talking Smack. She tested positive. There's reports going around. Nobody's called. Nobody's asked. And if anything, they've tried to hush her and other employees up. Adam Pearce is another one, another backstage talent. And it's being reported that they have been told to just hush, keep it on the hush. Mum is the word when it comes to coming out and going on Twitter and being like, yep, tested positive for the C word. And it's all in public perception. WWE is a publicly traded company, and one of whom have been deemed as an essential business. It's essential that we watch Raw and SmackDown on Monday and Fridays. Name a good episode of Raw and SmackDown that you've seen since March. Anyone. What am I missing here? What are we doing here? And it was reported that they wanted to have a show in Lakeland, Florida, July 24th. The numbers, have you seen the numbers in the cases in Florida? They're growing exponentially since things have opened up. People all at the beach, nobody social distancing, nobody wearing masks. But man, this WWE product, it's so great. We got to keep putting it out. Because that's the thing too. Yeah, there's other companies doing the same thing, but you know what? They're actually doing more testing than just a forehead temperature check, which is all WWE has done this entire process. Then to be so irresponsible to say, well, if you do contract it, well, don't make it public because, we don't want to look bad. That's horrible. WrestleMania should have never happened. And it sucks because after seeing the Undertaker's last ride, I mean, never say never, as they say, the cliche in wrestling, but the Boneyard match was his last match. It was fun, but who's to say they couldn't have just held Mania as a placeholder for SummerSlam and had it in like October, had everybody just minded their P's and Q's. They have enough content that they could air episodic stuff to kind of buy time if they weren't serious about the testing part. It's just, is it worth it? That's going to be the golden question when all is said and done. Was it worth it? And I think if you're WWE, you're getting record low ratings. SmackDown and Raw are in the 1.9 to 2.1 million, which especially for SmackDown, it's on Fox. And funny, I mentioned that. That's the reason why they're jumping through hoops and ignoring positive results and ignoring their biggest star, the face of their company, Roman Reigns, going, "Nah, I'm good," and sitting it out. The show must go on because, well, I mean, we got Fox invested in us with what, 2 billion, 2 B's, dude. So of course the show must go on. What are these Fox execs going to say if you tell them, we're going to show, old dumpster matches between the Outlaws and, Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack? No, we need fresh. We need new content, right? So it's just so gross how they've handled it, dude. And again, I'm not sitting here on the high horse about it. I honestly, I mean, and I've had this conversation off air. I think wrestling should have been on hold. I think they should have just aired, like AEW should have just aired like pay-per-views, and maybe you could do a studio show where it's just you in a studio. You're just one host, like Taz or Excalibur or somebody, and you could just do different hype video things or do Zoom interviews with people. Like, there's content that you could produce that wouldn't involve people's health being a detriment, And then it sucks for companies like NWA. Going back to the first topic of the show, Dave Lagana's done. He resigned. He stepped down from NWA, and he played such a pivotal role as far as the production goes with that company. So all the Carneyland stuff and all the cool Girl Power, especially Girl Power, that was like my new favorite show. They were killing it on there. Marty Bell, Sienna, all the women that have contributed on that show, killed it. Thunder Rosa, killed it. Great. Eli Drake podcast, great. I hope he keeps that up in some capacity. The What's Causing All This, the Nick Aldis show, love it. So there's been great content there, but their content guy is garbage apparently, so he's gone. So that puts a hold, because now there's a hole in that position that they need. So NWA was one of those companies that I thought took the ball and ran with it as far as thinking above, thinking outside of the box creatively. So it can be done. So again, I'm not sitting here on a high horse like, oh, well, it's good for one company, it's not good for the others. Look at how New Japan have handled it. They're just now having shows, which is a great segue to talk about our next topic. New Japan Pro Wrestling is back, and I am so happy. Obviously, you can see representing right there with the lion mark. I'm so happy, man. I've missed New Japan, and especially at a time where, especially with like, there's no, outside of the big companies, there really aren't shows running per se. And, New Japan's been for a while my favorite promotion as far as consistency of matches and for overall wrestling. And because that's always been my thing when I talk about New Japan to casual fans. They're like, oh, you do a wrestling show, or you're a wrestling fan. Oh, so you're like the Hulk Hogan stuff? And I'm like, no, like my favorite stuff is from Japan. Like they treat it like a sport in Japan. They get trophies like a sport. It's more physical. It's more believable. It's less soap opera storyline and more wrestling. Do you ever see Corkin Hall open up, like a show at Corkin open up with like a 30-minute promo, right? Like Ghetto comes out and cuts a promo tonight. Suzuki Gun, you got another thing coming, because you know what? You are going to face chaos. No, you don't see that in New Japan. Ding, 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 ding. All right, first match, boom. Second match, boom. Intermission. All right, here's the second half of the show. All right, we're going to do some, confetti falls. Here's a trophy. All right, we're going to do some backstage, press conferences. And then that's it. It's wrestling in its purest form. So that's why I get excited about New Japan. But the New Japan Cup has been going on. It started on June 16th. We are already heading into the quarterfinals. Round 2 still needs to finish out, and round 2, the remainder of the round 2 matches will take place on July 1st. And so we got Taichi taking on Kota Ibushi. We got Sonata taking on Sho. We got Yoshihashi taking on Bushi. And then we have Evil taking on Haruki Goto, which, impress your friends at a cocktail party whenever you can attend a cocktail party next. Haruki Goto has the most New Japan Cup wins since the New Japan Cup began, with 3. He has won the New Japan Cup 3 times. So a little fun fact, facts, rumors, knowledge, trivia. Give you a little fun fact there. So Haruki Goto, 3-time New Japan Cup champion. Looking at the rest of the second round, because obviously the winner of Taichi Kota Ibushi takes on the winner of Sonata Sho, and the winner of Yoshihashi Bushi takes on the winner of Evil and Haruki Goto. Now, if we go up to the upper part of the bracket for the quarterfinals, that part of the bracket is locked, and I'm super hyped about these 2 quarterfinal matches. Tomohiro Ishii taking on Hiromu Takahashi. That's such a unique match. The Ishii match with Toji Makabe was cool, and we've seen them, do battles for the Never Championship in previous spots. So it wasn't like a fresh match, but it was a pretty solid match nonetheless. Toru Yano and Hiromu Takahashi took place in round 2. My mood about that match, gonna hit the Yano shrug. Whatever. Yuji Nagata, Kazuchika Okada, dude, like Nagata pinning Suzuki in the first round pretty much was a stunner to me. And there have been a couple surprises like that in this tournament. Hiroshi Tanahashi losing to Taichi. Another sort of like, whoa, because that's the difference between G1 and New Japan Cup. New Japan Cup is single elimination. So you take the pinfall or the submission, you lose, that's it, it's a wrap. And there's, heavy things at stake here, because the winner of the New Japan Cup typically will go on to like Sakura Genesis or like Invasion Attack, whatever the like subsequent pay-per-view is following the New Japan Cup. I know it varies different years. But nonetheless, with this year, the winner of the New Japan Cup, that final match takes place July 11th. July 12th, they are taking on, at the Osaka-jo Hall, taking on the double champ, Naito 2 belts, Tetsuya Naito, the current reigning, defending Intercontinental and IWGP Heavyweight champion. So that's been something too. That's been sort of like Naito finally gets his moment, right, at Wrestle Kingdom. Back-to-back matches, back-to-back nights. It was 2 nights. And Naito finally gets his moment to shine. And then the C word happens. This stuff happens. So it's been sort of a bummer with that, but the stakes are high for the New Japan Cup, because the following day after the finals, July 11th at Osaka-jo Hall, the winner of this will take on Tetsuya Naito. And so rounding out the other quarterfinal, as I mentioned, Tomohiro Ishii and Hiromu Takahashi, and Kazuchika Okada taking on Taiji Ishimori. 2 bangers. Like, both of those matches are going to be bangers. The bottom part of the bracket, it's decent. But man, it's kind of like, March Madness, where like the one part, like the West region, you're like, it's kind of whack. But then you go to the East region, and you're like, oh shit, like, we got Duke versus Michigan State, and, so North Carolina taking on Michigan. So it's kind of how this tournament is working out. But man, it'll be interesting. It'll be super interesting to see how this shakes out. I don't want to speculate just yet and give who I think is going to win New Japan Cup. I think a sleeper pick would be Takahashi, just based on the fact that was supposed to be a match that, like a big match that they had planned for Naito as a title defense, was to take on his fellow stablemate in the Los Ingobernables de Japón stable. It was supposed to be Hiromu Takahashi taking on Tetsuya Naito, which I thought would have been a crazy match. If both are giving their best in that, dude, You know, you're not going to see a finger poke of doom in in the Takahashi Naito match. So I think you could have sort of like, you could have Okada taking on Takahashi and have some sort of like screwy finish, and then have Takahashi advance to the finals, and then have Takahashi go on, which, you know what? Maybe we go all Ingobernables final. Maybe we got Sonata and Hiromu, because you talk about over wrestler, super over, and Sonata's improved tremendously. And not that he's improved from the standpoint of like, oh, he was green or he wasn't good. Sonata's been good. Cold Skull, baby. But as of late, Sonata's been on that climb to get somewhere sort of, you know, more with what he's been given, because there's a lot of titles that have been thrown around in that stable. Sonata is that one dude that needs to shine outside of everybody else. So now that I'm thinking of it, you know what? I could see that happening. And man, I'm looking forward if we could get a Kota Ibushi Sonata match in the quarterfinals. Quarterfinals take place July 2nd. Semifinals take place July 3rd. And then the final takes place July 11th. The winner of the final goes on to face Tetsuya Naito. Fuck it, I'm going to call it all Ingobernables final. Sonata and Hiromu. Winner goes on to take on Naito July 12th at Osaka-jo Hall. And who knows? Either one of those two, either Hiromu or Sonata versus Naito, book it. Book it. So there you go. A little New Japan Cup action for you. Subscribe on New Japan World if you don't have it already. Dude, it shakes out to being like $9 a month. It's not much to come out. And I know times are tough, but as far as entertainment goes, when you could go see when shows had actual fans, you can go back and relive a lot of the matches in their glory. And dude, just like for any casual person that's like, New Japan, like what should I watch first? Which is always a funny question. Dude, just go back and watch the Wrestle Kingdoms. Those are like the manias for New Japan. Just go back and watch Wrestle Kingdoms. Find out who your favorite wrestlers of the past and the present are. And then from there, find who your favorites are, and then kind of just track their sort of, you know, journey when they were young lions or when they first started versus to where they are now. And I would say that's probably the best bet, you know, if you're just starting off with New Japan. But New Japan World, there's right when you log in or right when you get on the page, because if you haven't been there before, you don't have a login. When you go to the page, right at the top, you can undo Japanese. You can click the English option. It pulls up all the English features that you need to help navigate through the website. So again, New Japan World, it's coming at us this week, July 1st, July 1st and July 2nd for round 2 in the quarterfinals, and then the semifinals taking place July 3rd. So that's all going down throughout the course of this week here coming up, and then next week we'll get into the final. So good stuff from New Japan. One company that's definitely been on the outs during this whole process, Impact. And Impact has seemingly, and I hate to use this analogy because I have been a fan of the company since its inception. I remember my cousin at my grandma's house. My grandma and my aunt and my mom all went to the casino and staying overnight. And so we had my grandma's house to ourselves. It was, you know, that's for teenage kids, like sweet, like, you know, pay-per-view wrestling, pizza, you know, a bunch of junk food. And we just piled up. And my cousin's like, yeah, there's a wrestling show tonight, TNA. And I was like, what's that? And then it came out and it's like, oh shit, D'Lo Brown. And like, it was familiar people. So I've been a day one fan since it's happened. And have I kept up with it and watched Impact after, you know, Impact episode? No. But I still stay consistent with it. I still watch pay-per-views that they put on. I don't miss their pay-per-views. But as far as like the weekly shows, even before the C word happened, it was kind of waning in and out. But Slammiversary is their biggest show of the year, and it is due to take place shortly here, July 18th, which is a popular date. I'll get to that here in a moment. But the storylines right now are kind of in shambles. And what the main reason is their former Impact World Champion, Tessa Blanchard. She has been axed. Like, she's done with Impact. This was such a big deal when Tessa won the championship, and especially you talk about like the women's revolution in WWE and just wrestling in a whole, and especially the topic we just talked about earlier. You know, women can do it too. Whatever you can do, I can do better. Women, whatever your take is on intergender wrestling, Impact pushed the envelope. And I mean, the matches she had with Sami Callihan, in my opinion, were all, I think, done in great taste and came out well. I thought it translated well. Tessa as a champion, I don't know how believable it could go, especially fighting someone like Moose. And no, I'm not meaning women are as strong as men. I'm saying, like, dude, if you had a smaller wrestler like a Austin Aries and it was Austin Aries Moose, it wouldn't be believable to me that Austin Aries would beat Moose unless there was some kind of weird hijink, you know, schoolboy package or schoolgirl in this case. You know, you could have some sort of hijinks or distraction. But other than that, like a clean win, you wouldn't see it. And so how long could you go with a champion where if you're facing opponents like a Michael Elgin, who that's another dude out of the company, if you're having matches with these big brutes, how long does that run its course to where it's just tired and redundant, you know, seeing the same result over and over, just in a different fashion with a different wrestler. So I digress, but Tessa Blanchard was due after night 2 of Rebellion. Tessa Blanchard was due to defend the Impact World Championship against Michael Elgin. And also Eddie Edwards. It was a triple threat match. And due to Blanchard and Edwards being stuck in lockdowns in Mexico and Massachusetts, they were unable to. So the matches didn't take place. So Elgin faced Moose and Hernandez in a triple threat match instead, which Moose won. So Moose became the interim champion. And Moose came out with like the OG TNA belt. He had the Ultimate Warrior, like streamers on his arms. And shout out to Moose, man, like interim champion or whatever champion nonetheless in his own right. I was in Nashville, Tennessee for that Best in the World show for Ring of Honor. That was the card. That was Kevin Steen's final pay-per-view with Ring of Honor. And then it was also a main event of Michael Elgin and Adam Cole. Adam Cole had the ROH belt for forever, kind of similar to his NXT run. And Michael Elgin won. And so that was the coronation of Michael Elgin as a top guy. A lot of fans were pissed off about it and booing. As soon as he grabbed the belt, people were heading for the exits. I remember that show. But also on that very show, Moose debuted in the wrestling world in general. And they actually interviewed him in my aisle. He was just at the end of the aisle for me because I was ringside. And so I've seen him since he first grabbed a microphone, stepped in a ring with wrestling. And so it's been a fun journey for him. And I'm glad, I'm happy that Moose is finally getting a shine. Now, people could sit here and mock Impact because, you know, Impact's title has been removed from the PWI archives. True story. That is not considered a major title wrestling belt in the PWI ranks. Take that for whatever it's worth. But so anyways, so on a May 5th episode of Impact, it was announced that an 8-man tournament would take place to determine the number 1 contender for the Impact Championship. Ace Austin won the tournament on the June 2nd episode after defeating Wentz, who stood in for Trey after he was attacked for the match tournament final. See where I'm getting at? Like, this stuff is all over the place, dude. And on the following week's episode, it was announced that Tessa Blanchard would defend her title against Elgin, Edwards, Austin, and Trey in a 5-way intergender match at Slammiversary. And then the accusations all came out. And then the firings came out. And so Dave Chris, Joey Ryan, gone. Michael Elgin, suspended indefinitely, pending further investigations into the allegations of assault made against him, gone. June 26th, Impact released a second statement announcing that Elgin had also had his contract terminated with the promotion as a result of the allegations. 24 hours earlier, Impact would release yet another statement announcing it had also terminated Blanchard's contract with the promotion and stripped her of the Impact World Championship, ending her reign as world champion at 165 days, and also removing her from the match. You talk about just dropping the ball altogether with her angle. And there was a lot of controversy after she won too. Like literally during her coronation, it came out that she had made bigoted statements, had dropped the N-bomb, so on and so forth. And there were women wrestlers who attested and who confirmed and were very vocal about it. And so there's a lot of controversy already facing her as champion. And it just sucks. It's like, we've never seen that in our modern era where a woman captures the main championship that's always been held by males. And I had always accredited Tessa's run to, and obviously in hindsight now you're like, ugh, but at the time, I liken Tessa Blanchard's run to the run that Becky Lynch should have gotten. Like the whole man gimmick, I'm the man, so on and so forth. That Tessa run in Impact, that coronation as champ, that should have happened with Becky. Now, we're not saying Becky's going to beat Brock Lesnar or anything, but could she have had a competitive match with someone, maybe, I'm trying to think of who, but like an AJ Styles? Like, can you imagine an AJ Styles-Becky match? Now, whether they would agree to intergender or even if WWE would go there, I know they've considered it and they've done sort of mixed tags, but doing the whole man gimmick and her like taunting and teasing dudes like she was going to beat them up, it just seemed like that was the finish line for the man gimmick when they first started that with Becky Lynch. She was a badass. She had the busted up nose and the blood all over. Like, so Tessa Blanchard got the Becky Lynch run that we thought should have or would have happened. And come to find out, all these things came to light, all these things happened, and here we are today. So you see where I'm getting at? This is just a cluster fuck of just all kinds of proportions for this promotion. And so I think in an attempt of desperation, they've aired this weird commercial, and I haven't checked like all the different Twitter mentionings of all the aforementioned like firings in WWE, but WWE released, that was like the Black Friday of Black Fridays in WWE. They fired a ton of their roster. And, you know, Rusev and Drake Maverick, who re-signed with the company. But Rusev, Matt Cardona and Brian Myers, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. Just a laundry list of different people. Gallows and Anderson, two good brothers, followers of Kayfabe Connection, friends and followers. Nonetheless, dude, it's like they asked all these people, and quite frankly, people who they were just spinning their wheels in the company. They released all these people. And so Impact showed a commercial, and like one was the Bulgarian flag, and then it was like different little nuance, sort of like hint, hint, wink, wink. And they mentioned that a former world champion is going to be at Slammiversary, and they're throwing in all these subtle little cues as if they're like foreshadowing, like, you know, Slammiversary, they're going to be coming out with like a lot of former WWE talent to sign. What I think about it, especially with Impact, the way that their roster has been shaken up. I mean, Brian Cage, former world champ, gone. He's in AEW. He's fighting at Fyter Fest, which we'll get to in our final segment here of this episode. You got Elgin, who was in the main event scene, gone. Tessa Blanchard, gone. There's three big names that are just gone. Johnny Mundo was at one point in the main event for that company. Austin Aries was once in the main event of that company. Pentagon Jr. was once in the main event of that company. See where I'm getting at with this? They're starving for main event talent in Impact. Starving for it. And this is like, this, honest to goodness, is the most depleted Impact roster I think we've seen since day one. And that's no disrespect to the current workers there, but we got to be real here. They're taking the Rascals and breaking them into singles guys to push them, and rightfully so, because they're awesome. They're great wrestlers. Check out the Rascal stuff in PWG, dude, for the tag titles or just in general. Killed it. Every single match killed it in PWG. So I'm glad they're getting singles runs, but it's like Eddie Edwards, dude. Like, you know, we're not in the Wolves era or the Ring of Honor era of Eddie Edwards. We're like not even on the back nine. We're on like the 16th hole, you know, and I'm glad he's still out there and he's being competitive, but you're really kind of grasping at straws right now with the main event scene. So as it stands right now, you're looking in the main event as a fatal four-way for the vacant Impact World Championship. It's Austin Aries, forgive me, Freudian slip from what we just mentioned earlier. Ace Austin, Eddie Edwards, and Trey. And to be announced, the fourth. Other matches, the only two matches that they have slated here, and guys and gals, Slammiversary is in like 3 weeks. And we only have 3 matches. And so the big sell is that, oh, there's all these shocking, you know, former WWE guys are going to make shocking appearances at the show. But it's like, is that all the focus of the show is going to be? Just constant run-ins or surprises? Because we got 3 matches. We got that. We have Jordan Grace taking on Deonna Purrazzo, who just debuted in Impact, going to take on Jordan Grace for the Impact Knockouts Championship. Someone who was always under the radar, always underutilized with NXT, who I'm glad Deanna's getting her time to shine. So shout out to her. And then Willie Mack, who is the current X Division champ, taking on Chris Bay for the Impact X Division Championship. 3 matches for the biggest show of the year. It's 3 weeks away. That's not good. And I know they can't control all these situations that have occurred. So maybe the commercial is like Damage Control, hyping up all the former WWE guys. But I think the biggest one that they're going to try to go for, and one I could actually see happening, is former WWE talent Anderson and Gallows, Machine Gun and Gallows. So I think they will debut there. I think the stars are aligning for it. I would be shocked if they weren't. Shout out to the Good Brothers podcast, Talking Shop. You can get it anywhere you get your podcasts. But they keep plugging this countdown to Fucktown, as they say. And it's supposed to be like this epic shoot interview, I'm assuming, where they'll also give out like what their future plans are and which company they'll work for. And I've read, it's been reported that Impact has made them hefty deals, and they'll let them work New Japan as well. So, I mean, they need something, and especially with the depleted roster that they have currently, they need some star power and some value to the show, in addition to the already star power and talent that they already have on the roster. But they need to just kind of shake things up. It's a lot of talent lost in the last span of a year, and especially in the last month due to all the firings, and rightfully so. Impact made the best decision in getting rid of these people, these aforementioned wrestlers. So, but 3 matches, and it's 3 weeks away from the biggest show of the year. We got to do something here, Impact. So I'm going to watch the show. I'll order it. I'll get my pizza and my wings, and I'll watch as a fan, and hopefully good things come out of it. It's pretty unpredictable at this point with Impact, so we'll see where they go from here. Closing out tonight, AEW Fyter Fest. Fyter Fest will be taking place on TNT. It will not be offered as like a pay-per-view or a special event on Fight or, you know, anything as far as like streaming goes. Fyter Fest is going to be offered free for 2 weeks, July 1st, July 8th on TNT, 8 p.m. Wednesdays. And I think that was the right call, especially dealing with what we're dealing with currently. It's kind of one of those things where how often can you charge people $50, you know, for a pay-per-view? Presumably the next time that'll happen would be All Out, which is September 5th. So we're still a ways away from that. But I think it was the right call to hold Fyter Fest on TNT back-to-back weeks. This is basically pay-per-views 2 weeks in a row. Now, you know what's hilarious is the company that always says, oh, well, they're not competition. They're having Great American Bash scheduled for the next 2 weeks, which coincidentally was a show, the name itself coined by Cody Rhodes' late father, the great Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, baby. And, like, it's just another petty thing, and all you can kind of do is just roll your eyes at it. And I know all the NXT trolls are just, their life right now, just, they leveled up because AEW just got spanked in the ratings this past week. And AEW has only lost to NXT in the ratings, this is the 4th time, if I'm not mistaken, since October? This is the 4th time they've lost to NXT in ratings. And all the while, there have been invasion angles in NXT with main roster talent. They got Bayley and Sasha coming. They had Charlotte there. In the whole time that Charlotte was in NXT as the champion, AEW beat them in ratings. So they've ushered out like main event, like main roster talent to try and oust AEW's run in the ratings. And so finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks, NXT wins in the ratings, and not just like slightly, like they spanked AEW. So it's interesting to see now that their programming always sort of coincides with AEW. So ratings do matter for the people that don't already know. We've covered it on the show ad nauseum. So there's a whole reason behind ratings and their significance, but not want to talk about ratings. We want to talk about Fyter Fest. So AEW Fyter Fest, July 1st, the matches that will take place on Wednesday, July 1st, Kenny Omega and Adam Page, the reigning AEW Tag Team Champions, taking on Best Friends. That's going to be an awesome match. Do I see Best Friends taking the straps off of Kenny Omega and Adam Page? I just don't see it. The next match, we got Cody and Jake Hager for the AEW TNT Championship. I like what they've done with this title, and this people make fun of it looks like a title you get off a Wish and blah, 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 blah. For all you want to joke about the way the title looks, the matches have all been pretty solid, and especially coming off the heels of Ricky Starks surprising everyone and debuting on Dynamite in an AEW TNT championship match. It adds to that mystique of like, oh shit, who's the challenger going to be? And like, it's fair game, and you're good to expect surprises, and it keeps things fresh. And I think there are titles in other companies where fresh is the antithesis of what I would use to describe the title. So I'm looking for this to be a good match. I think the Jake Hager Moxley match was kind of lacking, and maybe it would have been better with the crowd. So maybe Hager and Cody will have a little more chemistry. Hager's match at Revolution, I was there live in Chicago. That was my last live wrestling show that I attended in February. That match was like, it was okay. It wasn't anything great. So it's like I'm waiting for Jake Hager to have that breakout match in AEW to really like signify, okay, he's here. Like, this guy's going to put on a solid match. I think we might be able to see that. I think if anybody can pull it out of him, it would be Cody. I think they might be best suited for each other. So I'm looking forward to that match, and I expect big things out of that match. Hikaru Shida taking on Penelope Ford for the AEW Women's World Championship match. Surprisingly, like, Shida is the best women's wrestler on the roster, hands down. Penelope Ford is the most improved women's wrestler on the roster. So this is an interesting pairing. Hopefully the chemistry works well in this match, but I think we're expecting another solid outing from Shida, because at the last pay-per-view, Shida had one of the better matches with Nyla Rose. That was a banger. So you take someone like Penelope, who's more agile and can kind of work to Shida's strengths. I could see this match definitely being another great outing for Shida. Next, a tag team match. This is Jurassic Park, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus taking on MJF and Wardlow. MJF, of course, has just been killing it since day one. But I think Wardlow is really on pace to be like a rookie wrestler of the year. And I don't want to say rookie in this demeaning way because he did work indies before coming to AEW. So it's not this like overnight success story. But every outing that we've seen of Wardlow thus far has been excellent. And especially his cage match with Cody and especially his match with Luchasaurus, he just has delivered. And it's a weird box to be put in with the bodyguard role. And right off the bat, you're kind of limiting that character to just being the muscle. And it's a punch kick worker, he's just a big brute guy. Wardlow can go. He can go, and he's super agile for his size. Super athletic. He's not your run-of-the-mill big dude, breathe heavy and just power slams and, suplex and, lariat, and that's it. That's all you get out of him. Wardlow, to me, is seriously on pace, and I know this has been a weird year, but Wardlow, to me, in my opinion, is seriously on pace to be like rookie wrestler of the year. So I'm definitely looking forward to this tag match. This has been brewing for weeks. And then last but not least, Private Party with the help of Matt Hardy, the Hardy Party, as they like to call them, taking on Santana and Ortiz. This will be a banger. This tag match will definitely be a banger. I like the way that they've spread the cards out. I think obviously the July 8th match is like the A card and July 1st is kind of like the B card. But I'm really looking forward to July 1st matches. And Fyter Fest, I think, is going to live up to expectations. And I think it's a good, I don't want to call it a placeholder with such negative connotation, but it's like they need something to get us in between, the last show to All Out. And that's where we get Fyter Fest. So I definitely think, by the time Fyter Fest happens and is all said and done, you pretty much got 2 months to build up to All Out. And so, that's like 7 to 8 episodes of Dynamite, which seems like a lot, but it goes by pretty quickly. So All Out, I'm anticipating to be just a huge show. And I think the fallout from Fyter Fest will really reveal kind of the direction they're going in as far as what matches to expect. Now, just a quick rundown of the July 8th matches. So this will be 2 weeks from now. We got an insane 8-man tag match. FTR and the Bucks taking on Butcher and Blade and Lucha Bros. Lucha Bros are back. God, I've missed Phoenix and Pentagon. That's going to be insane. We also have a 6-man tag. It's going to be Colt Cabana and the Dark Order. So we got Stu Grayson, Brody Lee, and Colt taking on SCU. And then Nyla Rose is taking on a mystery opponent. Lance Archer is taking on Joey Janela in a singles match. Jericho and Orange Cassidy in a singles match. And then the main event, Moxley, the current AEW champion, taking on the challenger Brian Cage with Taz. And that feud has really surprised me as far as Brian Cage has always been a big deal to me, but that quickly into the main event scene, you're like, okay, how are they pushing this? Him and Taz, it's like peanut butter and jelly. They go together perfectly, and Taz is a perfect complement to Brian Cage. Do I think Cage is taking the title off of Moxley? If you really want to give him a monster push, hell, you could really go that direction. It sucks for Moxley because I honestly think he won the title when there were fans, and then he never really defended it with fans. So it's an injustice to him for in a disservice basically, because after he got the big pop and that was a huge pop at the show, after that it's just kind of the sizzle kind of went away. And he is that character week in and week out on Dynamite. Moxley is the guy that feeds off of the crowd. His freaking entrance is coming through the crowd, literally. So it's really been to a detriment to him to not have that crowd to feed off of, much as it is with it. Whoop, we got Siri trying to interfere with the with the show, but we got, you know, a wrestler who, all wrestlers have been impacted by not having a crowd, but like definitely to Moxley's detriment, because he is a character that is centered on the crowd and being like the people's champ and so on and so forth. So I don't know if we'll see Cage go over in this. We could even get like a DQ kind of finish, which sucks for a main event for a title match, but I don't see booking wise how you get out of this one unless you give the strap to Cage. So that remains to be seen. It'll be interesting though, as I alluded to All Out a few moments ago. It'll be interesting. You know what? I'm still rolling with my prediction of a heel Cody. I think Cody's going to turn heel and unite himself with FTR and Sean Spears and Tully Blanchard, and you're basically going to see rejuvenation of the Horsemen, like a new Horseman stable. And so I can definitely see that happening. And I could also see Cody and Omega had a banger match at Supercard of Honor. Was fortunate enough to be in attendance for that show. I could definitely see either Cody and Hangman or Cody and Omega for the TNT title at All Out. And so having an elite versus elite sort of build up to that former elite person versus, you know, current elite. So I could see the fallout of that. Bucks and FTR, absolutely. Like, and that's something too that people have sort of poo-pooed on, like, oh man, you can't waste that match on no crowd. Like that match needs a crowd. I mean, this is kind of, they're really trying to do like a slow build to it. And the way things are going, it's tough speculating. I mean, odds are probably not going to have fans at All Out, but I think that's the show where you have that match, you know, and we'll see how things shake out after All Out as far as seeing, you know, in the November pay-per-view, what is it, Full Gear? If they're going to do Full Gear again this year, maybe there'll be fans there, but I think that you got to go with that match. So that's like kind of like your money match there. And I definitely think we're going to see Jericho and Tyson. I think they teased that on Dynamite to really try to plant a seed for a later like match. So I definitely think we're going to see Tyson and Jericho work some kind of match or gimmick or just something at All Out. So just, you know, a little bit of speculation on what I see happening. But yeah, Fyter Fest, man. I mean, there's things happening. New Japan Cup, Fyter Fest. I mean, July, we're kind of inching near where G1 would be. G1's taking place in October this year. So there's definitely stuff happening, though, right now to definitely keep us entertained and keep us occupied during these weird times, especially in wrestling, but definitely in real life as well. So I'm happy with the way things are going. I would like to see, as I said at the top of the show, I hope the business changes for the better. I hope there's actual tangible items that take place, actionable things that take place that really move things forward and in a quicker manner than we've seen it. I'm glad that things are being pointed out to the point where hopefully change is right around the corner from this uprising and from everything that we've had happen. Hopefully the wrestling business moves in the right direction. Hopefully the business takes a step back, looks at itself in the mirror and goes, okay, we need to do better. So, you know, I'm positive. I'm being real positive about just the direction that things are going in and the changes that have happened and, you know, what's to come. So yeah, that's it for Kayfabe. Quick plugs before we head out here. Subscribe on YouTube, whatever podcast you currently listen to. If they're cool, but subscribe to us. I mean, you definitely want to watch our show and get a different perspective than you're used to seeing, especially when it comes to wrestling. You're not getting generic metal music. Hi, I'm Guy with other guys. and we're going to talk about one company, and we're going to predict review, and it's just the same run-of-the-mill rhetoric show. Subscribe to Kayfabe Connection on YouTube if you want something different. Hit that notification bell as well, and chime in the comments. What do you think about Impact's roster right now? Who do you think could be a big name that they could sign that could change things around? You know, that's what the comment section's for. Let us know any of the topics from the show tonight. You want to chime in? Comment in the comment section. I'm definitely comment friendly to start a discussion, and that's not just with YouTube. Twitter at the letter K FABE Connection on Twitter. Constantly throwing out different perspectives, things that are funny, light humor, you know, good stuff, good spirited stuff on Twitter. So at the letter K FAB Connection on Twitter. Instagram, follow us on Instagram. Check out everything as far as like past live shows that we've been to, you know, different gifts or different spots or different just topics, or giving a shout out to different companies. There's a lot of cool like bootleg wrestling shirt companies that are popping up right now, and honest to goodness, their shirts are cooler than the actual company shirts. So I like to give those guys a shout out and share that stuff on Instagram. But yeah, that's it. So follow us on everything, subscribe on everything. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. And that's it for another episode of Kayfabe Connection. Next time someone tells you wrestling's fake, you know what you tell them? So are movies and TV.